Hello and welcome to the Spy Flight on YouTube. Welcome to Munich Airport. We are out in that midfield concourse area and we are in a little E-Jet today. This is a really cool pay-where airport if you haven't seen this airport. And I gotta tell you, you can even, if you get everything set up right, if you're looking for some immersion and everything, you can even walk right down the jetway. They've done a pretty good job of this. Now, there's some places that you're gonna have to walk through a complete wall, but you can get pretty much right on out to the airport. And so you can see here, we'll come down, there's the end of the jetway right there. And these terminals out here, there's 3 levels of waiting areas as you come on out and find your airplane. So if you haven't been down a jetway in a long time like me, it's kind of fun. And we are aboard a Lufthansa Regional E195. These are the E-Jets from Flight Sim Studios. They recently got an update. They recently released the E190 and 195, so perfect opportunity to hop on the airplane and do a little flight here on YouTube. And hello, my name is Dave. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. I hope you are doing well today. The whole idea behind a flight like this is so you can see all the little buttons that I've been pushing so that you can get these increasingly complex airplanes up in the sky, cruise, and down on the ground, and not have to pick up a bunch of pixels at the end of the runway. This airplane is getting more and more complex all the time. The developers are updating it. Usually every 2 to 3 weeks we get an update for the really nice little airplanes that we're flying today. So what is going to go on? What are we doing? Well, we're going to take the E190. Actually, I think this is the E195, and that means it's a little more long range. We are at Munich Airport. We're off to Vienna. This is a nice little hour and 10-minute flight, perfect for learning how to fly a commuter airplane like this. Departing off of 8 left, landing on runway 34, lots of little transitions that you're going to get, especially going into Vienna. Today, the Flight Sim Studios E-Jets have all gotten recently updated. The E190 and 195 are out, and they are really getting a lot more interesting than they started out to be. And you can even take them into a medium-sized VATSIM event. I've even had it on some slightly more busy VATSIM events, and you can kind of make it work if you stay ahead of the airplane. I'm using Navigraph and SimBrief. I also have a freeware and a payware airport, and I'll be using Pushback Helper to get the airplane back from the gate. This is using real-world weather and time in my video, so your weather is very probably going to be a little bit different. I'm going to show you how you load the airplane with the EFB. I'll also show you what to do because there's no VNAV, and the one little thing to watch out for, especially as you're transitioning from the Star into the ILS. We're also flying a real-world route that Lufthansa Regional flies. So a couple of things to keep in mind on this one. I've been doing the flight sim stuff for quite a while and live streaming on Twitch for a while too. This is not about the right way versus the wrong way to do things in the actual airplane. This is a simulator. Not everything is modeled in the airplane. So this is simply what works for me, and hopefully it will work for you too. The cool thing about doing all of this is you're going to be able to hop in a plane and fly along with me. Pause and restart and rewind the video if you missed something. That way you can see every button that you need to push to be able to fly the airplane. And I always like to say, in a couple of days after you do the flight with me, hop back in the airplane and do a hometown flight or something. That way you'll remember all of the stuff that you've gotten to see here. And with all of that yammering out of the way, let's go ahead and hop on into the plane. So we are at Munich Airport. This is a really nice airport. Of all of the sim airports that I've ever visited, this is one of the ones that I've never visited, I mean, in real life. This is one of the ones that I would like to visit. Okay, for immersion, you can't just wait for them to operate the jetway. You actually have to hop into the airplane itself to get into the jetway, and here's the best seat in the house. Usually one of the first things that I will do before flying is I'll move the rudder pedals, I'm going to move the yoke, I'm going to move the steering wheel, I'm going to move the throttles, maybe the speed brakes. Just make sure that everything in the airplane is working before I go and start stuff up, because in the world of flight sim and all that, if a USB connector goes away, That sometimes is enough to crash your airplane, so I like to make sure they're working. First things first, I'm going to get a ground power unit plugged in. This is the electronic flight bag. We also call them EFBs. And I'm also going to call my jetway right now. And if you look outside, you can see the jetway is on its way out to the airplane. And it should be coming on up here pretty quick. There we go. And it's a nice jetway too. They did a really good job on this particular airport. Okay, with that done, I'm going to go ahead and open that 1L door. I'm also going to open up the 2 cargo bays. I'm going to pull the safety pins out of the landing gear, and I'm going to remove the engine covers. So, well, looks like the engine covers are still on. Did I not click it well? Engine covers. Okay, let's try it again. Uh-oh, my engine covers are still on. That could be a problem. Well, let's go ahead and see what else I can do. So, safety pins and chocks and engine covers. Let's see. Oh, okay, there we go. So they were out. You need to put them in. I am going to put chocks in place, and I'm going to put cones around the airplane. And let's see if we got chocks out there too. You can't see them, but I think chocks are in place, so if your brakes aren't on, the airplane doesn't just start rolling around. All right, and now let's go get the flight plan. I did use SimBrief to plan the flight. The free part of SimBrief works really, really well with this airplane. You do have to enter a SimBrief ID into the settings page, but then after you do that, you can import your flight plan and all the data through here, and it really makes things go a lot faster. Munich to LOWW. That is Vienna. VChat, I believe, is also another name for the airport. Once you click the check, click it again, and that makes this thing active and all ready to go. Okay, so let's see. All that looks good. Everything looks good in there. So now what we can do is go ahead and start turning things on. And up here we go. The first thing to do is the battery switches. There's 2 of them. 1 and 2 goes on. And the airplane starts coming to life. When you just have the batteries on, it's going to turn on a couple of the monitors. And they also reworked the monitors recently, so they kind of flash and turn on the way that you'd expect them to. And on this thing, the only 2 that you're going to see pop up on the battery is the center one and one in front of the pilot, and also one of the FMCs over here. Okay, after that, we can come up here. We do have ground power, so we're going to punch in the ground power. When you click the button, you can see it kind of pressed in a little bit, but give it a second, because I think the airplane tests the quality of the power, make sure it's the right volts and amps and everything, and then it'll go and click it in. And then when you do that, if you look down, you'll see the rest of your little LCDs have popped on here. If you look down, you can see these are a little bit on the dim side. So click the bright button, and I usually click it up about halfway. And both of these are independent, so I do like to run both of them. Makes flying it a lot easier. On the other side of it, if you look, you can see these things are actually kind of blazing a little bit. So you can come over here and turn down the center. I usually turn it down to about 3 o'clock for a daytime flight. So about 3 o'clock or so, and then turn up a little bit of the flood and storm light here in the middle. And if you've got a wide view, you might want to just come over here and turn these down a little bit too, especially at night. That can be a little bit distracting. Okay, so now we've got ground power on, batteries are on. Next thing we're going to do is come down here and arm the emergency exit lights. In case you push the wrong button, it'll do that. And then if you look over here, you can see the nav lights are automatically on for you. And if it's nighttime, I think it turns your logo lights on as well. So there we go. Everything's looking pretty good here. Everything's nice and adjusted. Let's go ahead and come down here, and you hit the nav button to start, and then you go back 1 page to the maintenance page. This is the way the real pilots have told me they do it. You go to maintenance and go to dual and dual. Select the FMSs, and they're in dual mode. That's supposed to be the little test. Then go forward. This is when you check your active navigation database. So if you have a subscription to Navigraph, this should be updated. And then we'll go to the route. It already knows that we are at Munich Airport, but we are going to Vienna, so LOWW, and put that in destination. Now you can see it's got a flight ID, but that's not your flight number. That's not the number that I used on the flight plan to do the flight. I am a DLH flight 441, so you need to put that in there. You don't need the 0 though. So DLH for Lufthansa and flight 441, and put that into your flight ID. And then after that, you can do a flight plan request, and we're going to send our request in. And it's sending, and it says the flight plan is received. I'm going to clear that notification. Now, DLK, FPL, data link flight plan. We're going to go into the data link. It says EDDM to LOWW, apply the active flight. And that takes care of that. And we now have an active flight. Go to page 2, and KIRDI, MEDEL, MASUR, and then our airport. So that's pretty good. Next thing that I'll do is come on over here, and we're going to go to the ground page again. All of our doors are open. I'm going to go to the departure page, and it says over here for loading the airplane, real-time loading is 9 minutes and 27 seconds. We're going to start welcoming our passengers aboard right now. While we're at it, we can come up here and we can choose our runway. Right now, SimBrief is suggesting runway 8 left for departure. So 8 left, and it is dry here in Munich. And then come on over here, and this is where you'd put your weather in. You can go ahead and hit this, and this is supposedly going to get you the latest update, but I found that sometimes this information's a little dated. So 070, this is 7 knots. The latest METAR says 6, that's close enough. The current temperature is 7 degrees. The altimeter, 1032. This one was actually pretty good, so maybe this is data that's starting to get just a little bit better. And now we're going to go ahead and hit the calculate button. We have 8 minutes of loading for the passengers, but don't worry, we'll be busy for this whole thing. And now I'm going to hit the manifest button, and this goes ahead and gives you all sorts of data about your flight, including the 0 fuel weight and our takeoff speeds for flaps 2. The thing is I understand this airplane mostly takes off on flaps 1. So we're going to go ahead back, and let's go back to change this. And I'm going to change this to flaps 1 for our departure. And I'm going to recalculate all of that number. All that's still good. Let's recalculate flaps 1. Go to the manifest page. And now are we on flaps 1? We are. Cool. The send to McDo button is supposed to automatically send this data to the McDo. I've seen that's not one that I trust very much. It kind of messes things up. So I'm not using the send to McDo. It could very well be that I'm wrong and it works great, but I'm not going to take the chance on this flight. Everything's looking pretty good here. We are in Germany, in the European Union, so the APU is going to stay off for now. But one of the things we can do is come over here and put in the altimeter setting, which is 1032. You can see it's in inches of mercury, so click the outer ring to switch it to hectopascals, and 1032 is going to be our altimeter setting. And if you look in there, it's small numbers, but you can see, hey, I can see that. It's pretty good. If you look over here, you can see red for all the doors that we have open right now. Do I have a back door open? I do, but it's not showing up in there right now. So that one's not showing up there. The back cargo door is currently open too. All right, so all of this is looking pretty good. With the flight plan, let's go ahead and plug in our departure. So our departure runway, according to SimBrief, is going to be 8 left. We are going to do the KIRDI to Quebec departure. KIRDI to Quebec. And there we go. Let's hit apply. Now, this is where things get a little bit weird, because as you go into Vienna, Vienna doesn't just have a star for an arrival and an ILS. It also has a transition. A lot of the European airports have a transition. So let's go and put in our runway. SimBrief says runway 34 is best, and we're going to use the ILS for 34. Now, the next thing that we're going to do here is look and see. These, I believe, are the transitions. This is not the star. These are transitions. So you kind of got to dive into your maps a bit. So we are going to be coming in, and we're coming in on the MASUR 3 Whiskey arrival. So as we come on in here, there's NERDU, and we're going to come in and we're going to arrive at MASUR. That's our first waypoint. And we're going to end the star at NERDU, NERDU. That is your transition. And if you look, you can see here's NERDU, and it takes you all the way around. So what you're looking for is going to be the NERDU 5 November. That's your transition, and look at that. There it is, 5 November. It gets a little bit confusing, but eventually you start to pick up on these sorts of things. Then you go and put in your star like we're expecting, which is going to be MASUR 3 Whiskey. And there it is. So 33-4, NERDU 3 November to the ILS and MASUR 3 Whiskey. And there is our flight plan. And that should work out pretty good for us. So let's go back over to the flight plan page, and we're going to do the performance. While we're doing that, let's look over here at departure. And we got 4 minutes before our passengers are going to be all aboard. So we're in great shape. So takeoff and landing fuel. What numbers do you put in here? A real-world Embraer pilot came into the chat for my live stream over on Twitch and said what you do is you go to the taxi page number on fuel, and you put in your taxi fuel, which is 318. So you put your taxi fuel, 318, a slash, and then a 0. That's all you do for takeoff and landing fuel. So that's what we've got there, and now we go to page 2. Next on the list is going to be our cruise altitude, and according to the flight plan, that's flight level 290. Next is cruise winds. These are your average winds on the cruise, and you'll find it on page 1 of the Lido style of flight plan, and that is the default style in SimBrief. And it says our average winds on the flight are 003 at 35 knots. So we'll put that in just like that, 003 at 35 knots. And that goes in there. Zero fuel weight. What do we do? Well, guess what? Our computer has already computed that for us. The computer is computed. Yep, there it is. So, and it's over here. And this is going to be ZFW 4104. So we're going to go in and put that right in. 4104. 4104, and there's our zero fuel weight. So all of that's looking pretty good. Now let's go to page 3. Page 3, this is where you could set climb speed, econ cruise, econ, your cost index. I don't think that we can put this in yet here in the flight management computer, so we're not even going to try. But we can go to the data set page. And this is where you can do some D rates here. We're going to just leave these alone and leave all of these alone. I haven't been playing with any of these. So we'll go to FMS takeoff, and this puts us on page 2. We have to go to the previous page first and do page 1. It's just the way it's working right now. And this is where we're going to put in our runway heading. And our runway heading for our runway today is going to be 080. This says 083. It's going to probably be the difference between magnetic and true. So let's see. Another thing it does, let's experiment a little bit here. Runway slope. You can get your runway slope over here. And there's several ways to do it. The fastest way is to go to airports and go to Munich and go to runways. And you can see we've got, where's our runway? It's 8 left right here. Hit the info button. And it shows our slope is minus 0.14. Let's see if we can put that in. I don't know if it works yet. So let's do plus or minus 0.14. That means the runway actually slopes down a little bit. Let's put it in and see what it does. It doesn't work. So if you click it, if it doesn't work, it means that's not working yet. Our runway is dry today, and then the wind. And our winds today, again, are 070 at 6. 070 at... Actually, it said 07 over on the flight management computer. Why don't we use that number? And plug that in. So 7 down the runway, 2 knots of crosswind. And all of that looks good. Takeoff and it's looking good. And flaps are going to be 1 for takeoff, so that's good too. And then we hit the takeoff button. Now it does give you some speeds, 134, 137, 142, 134, 137, 143 is VR. So how about if we go with the 1 knot more, 143 for V2. And then it gives you VFS, flap speed, and it says 194. Hey, it says 194 there, and I take that 194 and I'm going to put that over in the speed window. So speed window's right here, so I'm going to put 194. That's my first acceleration speed that I want, unless there's something specific I need for the airport. I'm going to put that in because you're really busy on takeoff. There's no VNAV, so you got to do your own speed. So that's going to be the first speed. I'll hit 194. See that, we'll stabilize the airplane a little bit, maybe go flaps up at that point, and continue our acceleration. And so it just kind of, it's an extra step, but in my crazy brain, it makes it a little bit easier, at least on me. Okay, so all of that looks good. We'll come over here and we'll squawk 1000. So we're going to do that, and we're on standby, so that looks good. Everything's looking good up here. How's our passenger loading going? Over on the ground side, everything looks good there. And 9:27, I think our passengers are aboard. So let's come on over here, and we're going to go back to ground, and I'm going to close the doors. The cargo doors. Let's go up here to the APU, and the APU, you're going to go and switch it on. And then if you look down here at the APU, you'll see that it's going to go ahead and flash at you a little bit. And then the temperature goes up. And then once it stabilizes there, you should be able to go and turn it on. You can't just go click, click on this one and start the APU. And back here, if we come on back, we should hear. Up there goes our little APU going. And the APU is going. So with that, everything is looking pretty good. Passengers are nicely aboard. We'll wait until the APU, the ground power unit, says it's still in use. And there's 100%. And I'll bet the ground power has switched over to available now. That means the APU generator has automatically clicked in, and we can come over here and pull the ground power unit. At this point, we'll also close the main door and retract the jetway. And I'm also going to have the ground crew pick up the cones. We'll come up over here. We have 3 switches for the cabin. We're going to do fasten seatbelts and sterile. I'm going to leave no smoking is devices these days. So no smoking is your devices. Let's go ahead and finish up a few things here on the autopilot. The first thing we need to remember is our going to be our cleared altitude. And our first cleared altitude is right down here, flight level 70. So we're going to set our first altitude as 7,000 feet. We're going to set in that runway heading again, which is 080. Right now the heading bug is 000. So you've got all of the dials up here, but you're changing numbers in your the actual LCD. There are no numbers up here. Okay, so there it is, 080, and pretty much everything's set out to altitude, altimeter, and our heading, and our speed. So all of that looks really, really good. So it's about time for us to start thinking about pushing back. We still have wheel chocks in place. I'm going to look down here and see that my parking brake is on. So we're going to go ahead and remove the wheel chocks, and I'm going to use something called pushback helper. Pushback helper is a great way to get yourself pushed back. It works really fast, and I really like using it. So here comes our tug, and if we look over here, you can see the tug's out. Starting to get a little dark outside. I think we'd better come down here and turn on the logo light. Otherwise, the marketing people are going to send us a nasty email. Perfect time for a sip of coffee. And also a perfect time while we're waiting for the tug to come over here. And we're going to turn off this part of the map. I'm going to turn on flight tracking. And I'm going to zoom this base map all the way in. And you can see as you zoom it all the way in, it's really, really nice. It gives you your gate number, 244. You see the orange line, the blue line, the center line, and Echo 2. And this is a really great way to track your taxi at an unfamiliar airport. And at this point, we're going to go ahead and turn on the beacon. The airplane itself is starting to get complex enough that I'm this close to starting to use a checklist. It's almost time to start using a checklist. I'm going to go ahead and turn on the transponder, squawk TARA. That's your only option right now. And that's going to be mode Charlie on VATSIM. I think we're clear to push back, so parking brake is going to go off. And I have that set up over on my Thrustmaster TCA Airbus controllers. And all we're going to do is reverse. And back we go. You can also monitor your progress with this here. And my guess is, I don't know here at the Real Munich if they push you nose right, nose left. But we can come down here and we can start up an engine. So let's start engine 1. And if you come on outside, you'll hear the engine starting. The engine starts are pretty good. Engine starts from the cabin are pretty good too. At Denver, they basically just push you straight back and you turn whichever way you need to go. And if I'm going to push straight back, you can see there's a little road line here. This is for ground traffic to move. I would push my airplane at least straight behind that. And all that's looking pretty good. That's probably pretty good. We're going to hit stop. I'm going to do parking brakes. And it says the parking brakes are on. I'm going to hit the tug button. And there goes the tug. And then we can turn off pushback helper. Pushback helper is free at flightsim.to. And I will tell you, I think it's a good deal. Let's turn on. There is a pump over here. Electric pump A. I should have turned that on before we started the engines. And all of this looks good. Let's slide over here. You can see that the little plastic safety cover has already popped back up. So we'll remove for engine number 2. And we are starting engine number 2. And you can monitor the start here. It's starting to get kind of dark here. So I'm going to go ahead and move these down just one click here. And while we're waiting, we can set the map up. I also will usually come turn on and off a couple of things. And we're going to come over to systems. And everything looks good there. I'm going to go to flight controls for my systems page right now. And you can hear a couple of beeps. It says hydraulic tube pressure is low. It could be that I have not started this up in the correct way. And that's why it's flashing at us. But then it goes away. So that's either, hey, we're pressurizing the hydraulic now or something. I don't know. One of the things that I forgot to do when you're doing all this is when you're setting your speeds for takeoff, you also set your trim for takeoff at that time. That's according to a real-world Embraer pilot that came in and told me when you're setting your V speeds in the FMC, you also set your trim. Trim is right here. And you can see our trim is currently set to 2. Our trim is supposed to be 1. And there is our trim for takeoff. Looking good. Engines are looking really good too. So we'll come here. Let's do our control checks like the real pilots do. Elevator all the way back and off. All the way back. All the way forward. All the way back. Neutral. There's all the way to the left. Let it go back to neutral. All the way to the right. Let it go back to neutral. Rudder to the right. Rudder to the left. And that looks good. Let's go to the map page here. And that's all set and ready to go too. Everything's great here. We're going to do flaps 1 for takeoff. I have my flap switches set over on the controller, so I can go up and down 1, and that's pretty easy. And then all of this is looking good. We'll come on up here. Let's go ahead and tell the passengers to turn off their electronic devices. I'm going to turn on a taxi light. I'm going to ring the attendant call button. Let the cabin crew know we're going to start taxiing the airplane. I'm going to look the opposite way that I'm going first. I don't see anybody there. We'll look over here. Parking brake is off. Let's add just a little bit of power. Out we go. Airplane starts to move, get a little bit of momentum, and then you can start your turn out. Gently does it usually is the way to go. Sometimes as you lose momentum, you have to kind of straighten out your nose wheel and then continue your tight little turn. And there we go. There is our taxi line. Let's go ahead and we're going to get the closest one here and go over the bridge. And around we go. It's also cool to look in the direction you're going to go. Generally, this airplane does an incredibly good thrust idle taxi. And all that looks good. Now, as we're coming on out here, this scenery is so good. You can see the bridges over here, and there's traffic. So there are taxi bridges here, and you can see airplanes that are cars that are going under the bridges. They've done such a good job on this airport. It just blows me away how good this airport is. Okay, after this, we'll probably go and get the November taxiway. And around we go there. Munich is also one of my favorite airports in flight simming because they actually have one of the businesses that is out here at the airport is called Airbrow, and they have their own little brewery out here. I'm going to turn on the dome light. Makes it a little bit easier to see. The real pilots would not have the dome lights on, but while I'm recording videos and doing live streams, it's just so much easier. There is the control tower, and I am told that the Airbrow is right over in this area. If I ever get successful as a YouTuber and a live streamer, this is definitely an airport on the list to go and try out the Airbrow. So that'll be fun for sure. Okay, we do have a takeoff config button we can press.
Takeoff okay.
Hey, the takeoff is okay. So that means we've got our flaps set. We've got our trim set. We don't have the auto brakes to RTO though. So auto brakes go to RTO. Rejected takeoff. Cabin sounds are pretty good. I did find moving around this cabin to set a wing view over on the left side a little dodgy. There are what I call and what the airline people call monuments. So if you're one of those people that works for the airlines and you are designing the cabin of an airplane, a monument is something in an airplane that does not move in the cabin of an airplane. Seats you can move around. Some galleys you can move all around. Lavatories a little bit hard to move around. You know, they're fixed with, you know, the sewage pipes and stuff. And they call those immovable objects monuments. I'm using that airline term here because you can only move certain directions in some cases, and that also includes in the cabin to be able to set up wing views. So there's a few too many what I call monuments here in this airplane, so I haven't been able to set a nice left-hand wing view yet. So my view to the left is over there. Coming up to the end of the runway, we're a small commuter. My guess is ATC is going to tell us to take this first turn, and we'll depart Alpha 3. This area is also a de-icing area. And as the simulator improves, my guess is someday soon we're going to have to start doing de-icing in the wintertime. So here we are coming on up to the hold short line. There's two hold short lines. There's the category 2 and 3 lines. So if visibility is really low, you would have to stop here at the category 2 and 3 line if airplanes are doing category 2 and 3 landings. Otherwise, a simple ILS hold is going to be right on up here. And you can even see out the window, it says Category 2 and 3 hold. So we're just kind of coming on up here. And here is our very long airplane. Okay, so if you've got the E190 and 175, it's a shorter airplane. This one's longer. And a good little rule of thumb for these longer airplanes is you have a better chance of a tail strike on a longer airplane. Now you can see as we're kind of coming up here, there's the hold short line. So we'll stop here briefly. Everything is good to go. So the next thing I'll do is come down here, and there is a button on the throttle. It's the toga button. I call it the magic takeoff button. So if you look over here, you can see that there's nothing above the artificial horizon. Nothing up here at all, right? Let's hit the magic takeoff button. There we go. And looking up here, now you can see takeoff is armed and LNAV is armed too and ready to go. So let's go ahead and go. Usually when I get cleared onto a runway, that's when I'm going to turn on my strobes. I will also be nice and do another cabin call. Let the flight attendants know if any of them are standing up, now's the time to sit down. Throttle up a little bit to get us going. Especially if you're in a busy VATSIM event, you're going to definitely want to move the airplane fast. Especially in some of the VATSIM Germany events, because they are, moving airplanes quickly. If it's an airport with just one runway, when they tell you to line up and wait behind another airplane, you need to move like you have a purpose, because chances are, as soon as you start making your turn, they're going to give you a cleared for takeoff, because they're also trying to fit you in with landing traffic. And there's straight down the runway. I usually wait till I'm straight down the runway before I turn on landing lights. Landing lights are insanely bright, and you can blind a pilot on the other side of the taxiway if you don't do that. Okay, lined up pretty good. Let's go throttles up about halfway. And I look in here, make sure my engines are stable. They appear to be nicely stable. I'm going to push my throttles forward a little bit more, and I'm going to hit the auto throttle button. There's auto throttle. And up and away. I might push the nose down just a touch sometimes. The airplane does have speed callouts. 80 knots. Checked. Which I wish all jetliners had. We need to be looking out the runway, not looking at the speed tape. Gentle takeoff there, because I don't want to drag the tail. There is Munich Airport. Landing gears going up. Watching my flight directors. I'm climbing a little bit too much. I always go back into the cabin to watch my takeoff, and I always end up climbing too fast. So watching those flight directors. The speed is coming up fairly nicely. And if I watch my flight directors even more, it would come up even more nicely. And there we are coming up on 3,000 feet. And I'm going to go ahead and turn on the AP because I'm going to get busy. No shame in turning on the AP. And here is flaps retract speed, so we'll go flaps up. And I'm going to come down here and do speed up to 210. There is 210 on the speed. Looking pretty good. LNAV is in pink right now. I'm a little concerned that we're not actually LNAVing. I think it should be blue. It should be green. There's 210 knots. So far, so good. If there were any speed restrictions, we'd be worried about that. Not so. I'm going to increase my speed now to 250 knots. There's 250. Our flaps are up. The auto brakes are off. There's 240. The airplane is making a little bit of a turn now to the left. I think that's probably to get over this waypoint, M071. Let's see if we go to Ratke here. So 2 miles to DM071. Look at that. Now it's making the turn to Ratke. So, and did it change color? Nope. LNAV is still pink. So I'm going to assume that pink LNAV is good. Out we go. Landing gear is up. Flaps are up. Speed brakes are off. ATC just called. Said climb to flight level 14,000. So 14,000. This airplane also puts meters up here too. If you're flying in a country that has meters, that's pretty cool. Now then, we've made this turn to Ratke. LNAV clearly has us right now, but sometimes the airplane does a little freak out, especially on approach, and we'll be talking about that. But I always like to hit the center of the heading select button, because by hitting the center of the heading select button, it always keeps my heading bug straight up. That's the direction we're supposed to fly. Transition here at Munich, I believe, is 5,000 feet. So by now we should have gone to standard altimeter. There is standard altimeter. And passing 7,000 feet, looking good. Nice outside view. There's Munich Airport. We will be back. And out we go. Nice view outside the cabin. And there's coming up on 8,500, continuing on to Ratke. At this point, we're done with the takeoff page. I'm going to go to progress over here, and I usually leave this one over on the radio page. Coming up on 9,000 feet. Next thing that we have to do, again, there's no VNAV in this computer, so what we have to do is we're going to have to manually increase our own speed at 10,000 feet. We're also slightly off the heading bug, so I'm going to reset that heading bug again. Always like to keep that up there. And here we are coming up to 10,000 feet. So now I'm going to increase my speed to 270 knots. 270 will also come up here. I'm going to turn off the landing lights, turn off the nose light, and the center switch. It says no smoking, but in modern jetliners, they've changed no smoking to devices. Let people pull out their laptops and their iPads and stuff. Speed's coming up pretty good. ATC called. Continue your climb to flight level 210. Flight level 210. Usually you'll get these kinds of step-ups like this from ATC. Our step-ups are going pretty good. And I'm going to monitor over here real fast and see. There's our departure. See, it said maximum 250 knots until Ratke. I just busted a flight restriction. I should have stayed to 250 knots until Ratke. The speed police are going to come get me. I didn't read it. There are all sorts of these little things. So now if we had something like the Phoenix A320 or the PMDG, it would have seen that speed restriction and you wouldn't be doing it yourself. And so reset the heading bug. And we are now past Ratke, so now we're not speeding anymore. Maybe nobody caught us. Right. ATC called again. Climb and maintain our final cruise, which is flight level 290. There's flight level 290. And about 15,000 feet or so, I'll also increase my speed a bit. I'm going to hit the heading select button again. You do that quite a bit here, just to keep it straight up. And there's a little bit of a turn to Mebeck. I think the winds are starting to pick up just a bit. There's 14,000. Around 15,000, I'll go ahead and turn off sterile cockpit. That's also a sign to the flight attendants that they can get up and start doing cabin stuff. 14.5, not so bad. Nice little climb at about 2,000 feet per minute. Engines are at about 84%. We are 164 miles out of Vienna. There's 15,000 feet. Now I'm going to increase my speed to 280. That usually when we hit to get to transition, that's gonna, when we transition from indicated airspeed to Mach, usually at that point, that's gonna put us out at Mach 0.75, and that's pretty decent climb for this plane. Heading bug is off again, hit that heading bug there. Out we go a little bit more, a little bit of a turn. So far, so good. Nothing to worry about here. All the lights are in good shape. If you think that your instruments are blazing a little bit much at night, you can come up here and turn down the backlighting. There's the main panel. There's the overhead. And I usually turn these down just a little bit as it gets darker in the cockpit. So all of that looks good. And over here, we could probably stand to turn the ECAS down a notch or two. Turn everything down and that floodlight down a bit too. If it's too bright, then, you know, you really can't read the numbers too well. Coming up on 18,000 feet. And I'm going to hit the heading select button again. This is a short flight, so usually at this point, if I start getting a little bit of breathing room, I'm going to already start thinking about my descent and my arrival. So we did a very nice departure. We're clear of the SID. Here is our nice little flight route on Navigraph. And we're not going back to Munich, so at this point, as soon as I know we're not going back to the airport, I'm going to go clear out the charts for the departure. So now I've got my star. There's our star, my transition, there's my transition, and the ILS. The ILS here is going to give me my frequencies. For the ILS, it's 108.1. What I'm going to do is come down to the radio, even as early as this, and I'm going to put that in here. And I'm going to put it in as my standby nav, 108.1. Most of the time, this airplane, you can see the FMS is in auto mode. It will automatically tune in your ILS, assuming ATC doesn't change your runway. If they change your runway, you're going to have to do it manually anyway. But I'm going to put that in to remind me what the frequency is, because when I start to change it, all I have to do is hit one little button if it forgets to do it, and sometimes the airplane forgets. That makes it so much easier for me. Well, I've also got a moment. I'm going to look over here at my charts and look and see that a Category C airplane, the minimums at the bottom of the chart, the approach chart, are 794 feet. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to set my minimums right now. So we're going to set it to Barrow and 794. And you can see the Barrow number is changed here on the bottom of the artificial horizon. We'll just dial that up. You can do it in increments of 10. So 794, the closest we're going to get to round it is 790. So 790. And again, it seems a little bit early. This is one of those times when I say, you know, this is not about the right way versus the wrong way. This is what works for me. This is a two-person cockpit. I've got nobody to help me with the radios. I've got nobody to help me change the flight plan if ATC says change your flight plan. So I'm doing stuff really, really early so that as we come in and Vienna decides to say, no, we'd like you to use the other runway, I'm all ready to go. So that's kind of why it is that I do things super duper early like this. Just reset the heading bug, passing flight level 230. It is a dark night tonight over Germany, although you ought to keep an eye at this time of year. When the moon starts to come up, it really is rather spectacular when the moon starts to rise. Really pretty spectacular. Climbing at about 1,100 feet per minute now using flight level change. Seems to be doing pretty good for us. We're direct to MEDEL. We are currently, data here is really nice, 15 miles from MEDEL, 132 miles from Vienna, not Lowy. We're not going to Innsbruck on this one. The airplane right now does not have top of descent. So what do? Well, again, it's never too early to get started on these things. So we are coming in at MASUR. And at MASUR, we need to be somewhere between flight level 170 and 6,000 feet. So how do we do this? Well, first of all, let's look over and see. There's MEDEL. Looking at the flight plan, you can see we're next is MASUR after MEDEL. So it's a good thing we're doing this. We're going to flight level 290. So we got to go and do what's called the descent calculation math here. It's a little complex, but it's not bad. Use the calculator. We're going to 29,000 feet. 29,000. The lowest we want to be is 6,000 at MASUR, so subtract 6,000 feet. Multiply that by 3, divide it by 1,000, and we've got 69 miles. Okay, 69 miles. This is what I call an incredibly squishy number, okay? This number does not take into account speed or wind or, how well your dilithium crystals are working. It's a squishy number, so I always add something to that. 69 miles is what we have to go to. Well, let's see. We are already 78 miles from MASUR. So as soon as we get flight level 290, we got to start our descent. So, and we have to do this manually. So that's how it is that I set that. And I'll sometimes just leave this number up here, and I'll leave it over on the other screen to remind me of top of descent. So there's MEDEL. We are now 75 miles from MASUR. We actually need to start down now. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go altitude select, and I'm going to stop at flight level 270. We're not going to make it. Just not going to make it to that. And we're also going to need to speed up manually a little bit here. So let's just go to 290. We'll go to 300 knots here for our cruise, which is going to be all of about 10 seconds. So we are 71 miles from MASUR. Our descent needs 69 miles. So we'd better get going. Fortunately, we got a little wiggle room here. At MASUR, it's between flight level 170 and 6,000. That's why we're not in massive panic mode on this thing. Okay, so direct to MASUR. I'm going to reset the heading select to straight up. We don't see MASUR here. The map is only at 12.5 miles. There's 25 miles. There's 50. So now you can see how it is that you can change this. And we have a 51 knot crosswind, so we're a little crabby on this. So we are 67 miles from MASUR. There's a good 300 knots. So, hey, we get to cruise a little bit. Let's turn off the seatbelt sign. Surely there is a passenger back there that had too much coffee and, is in pain. Trust me, as a passenger, you only have to learn that lesson once. But we're going to go and turn that off for a few seconds here. There's 300 knots. Life is good. What a nice cruise. Passengers are happy. The sounds in the airplane are actually pretty good, too. I do like the sounds in this airplane. All right. We got to descend. So, what was that altitude again? Our altitude again is 6,000 feet. So, we're going to come over here. And let's go and put 6,000 feet in the altitude window. There is 6,000 feet. There's our lowest altitude we can go to at this point. I'm going to reduce my speed now to about 280 knots. Unless ATC tells me to go faster or slower. So there's 280 knots. Speed comes down really quick. Now, you can hit flight level change, but in this airplane, you hit flight level change, and the airplane goes clunk. It doesn't crash, but it really does start your descent. It's a bit abrupt. And so I really kind of like to use vertical speed on these because it's a lot smoother, and, in commercial airlines, you don't want them to go clunk. That just scares the passengers. So vertical speed, and we're going to start going down. And I'm going to slowly just crank this little thumb wheel up to about 1,800 feet per minute. And that makes for a nice gentle descent. And there's 1,800 feet per minute. There we go. Now, we do have an altitude constraint at MASUR. So it's 6,000 feet. We're not going to go any lower than 6,000 feet. And actually, we get to go between flight level 170 and 6. So we only have to be above. We can't be below. So we're all set and good to go there. So our descent has started. And so far, so good. There is a thing that this airplane does. And right now, it's just, especially if you want to fly this in a VATSIM event or something, you have to be ready for this. Between the star and the ILS, the airplane has a tendency to skip waypoints. And you'll be coming in and say you're coming in to the end of the star, so Nurdu, and after Nurdu, it just decides to go off to the left or go off to the right. It's some other waypoint has just popped into its head. Now, it could be I'm doing something wrong. I think that there's something wrong right now with the flight management system. So this is a time, as you're approaching the end of the star, you have to be ready to take over from LNAV. Okay, and it's basically you're just going to do heading hold and follow the approach. It means your day just got a little bit more busy, but it does happen. It's happened to me going into Boston and Newark, and oh my gosh, it really did make for, chaos in the cockpit, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria kind of stuff. So that's another reason why I'm always keeping my heading select button straight up after every turn. And that way, if it starts to go over here for some reason, I'm ready to just hit the heading hold button and we're back on course. So nice approach here. Let's see. Everything looks really nice here. Flight details are pretty cool. Nothing interesting there. The departure page is clear. The manifest page is clear. Ground and charts are all clear too. I usually leave it on flight details. One thing that we are going to need though is the latest weather. So where can we go and get the latest weather? Some airplanes are actually getting the METAR data in. The latest METAR data that I had for Vienna was winds are 050 at 4 knots. Clear skies, 6 degrees, minus nothing, no degrees for the dew point, and 1036. So I think that probably that hasn't changed. You could also come over here to Navigraph, go to airports, go to Vienna, go to, let's see, general, what do we want? Weather. Easy enough. And here's the latest. So for me, I'm going to just copy this and paste this over in my flight notes here. By the way, my flight notes, I call these the flight strip. You can go, and if you look in the description below, you can copy and paste this into your own notepad and use it any way you want, and it works really, really well. So we got to continue getting ready for landing here. Coming on down here, go to Performance and Landing. Runway heading. What's our runway heading going to be? Runway 34, it's going to be 339 degrees. So let's go ahead and do 339. And that goes in there. Our temperature is 6 degrees. I think we saw, was it 6? No, it says 4 on the latest METAR. So 4 degrees. Hey, it does convert over to degrees Fahrenheit if you're flying in the U.S. The winds right now are 090 at 3 knots. 090 at 3. That goes up there. We're going to do flaps 5. Some real world Embraer pilots say they land flaps 5. Flaps full is basically the super duper slowest, shortest runways ever. We don't have any reports of ice right now, so we're going to leave that off. Landing page says basically VAP is 146. I always add 1 knot to that, so 147. Passing 17,000 feet. We also have to keep track of our own transition here. So transition level is 10,000 feet. That's the altitude. So for the level, I always, unless there's other information, I just add 1,000 feet to that to get a level for descent. Level is descent, altitude is climb. So 11,000 feet is when we're going to reset the altimeter to 1037. And so far so good. Let's go ahead and bring this map in a click. There's 25 miles. We're going to come over here and hit the heading select button again. Can't do that too much. At MASUR, we have to be at 6,000 feet. We're clearly going to be high, but because we've got a little bit of a fudge factor in there, we don't have to worry. We only really have to be at that 6,000 feet here at NERDU. Let's come on over here and check the ILS. Our ILS frequency is 108.6. The FMS is currently in auto mode, but it's not over there yet, so we may have to manually set that up for ourselves. And there's 15,000 feet. We're going to go do seatbelts. There goes seatbelts. And this airplane is really pretty cool. If you look, you can see the seatbelt light is on, which is pretty neat. Not exactly the most important part of a flight sim airplane, but developers are starting to make stuff work in the cabin too. Nice opportunity to have a sip of your in-flight beverage now. And we really are. We're so far ahead of the game that we can kind of sit back and relax a little bit here. We're still at 14,000 feet, doing a fairly decent descent at about 1,800 feet per minute. Good time to check and see, were there any speed restrictions coming in? There we are coming into MASUR. I don't see anything. Are there any other speed restrictions over here? No. So I'm going to guess we don't have to worry about speed. So it's just 250 knots at 10,000 feet. And everything is still right with the world here. Did you switch over yet? No, you didn't. We don't need it yet, but it's good to keep an eye on that thing. I think we'll make 6,000. We got about, what? It's 12. I think we're going to make that in about 25 nautical miles easy. We will have to slow down between MASUR and NERDU, though, to 250. Hope all of this is making some sense. This is a cool little airplane. One of the reasons that I really like the Embraer E-Jets is these are airplanes that are flying in the real world today. And if you're young and starting a career as an airline pilot, this could very well be your first assignment over there in the right seat. So having airplanes that are flying currently in the real world is one of the exciting things that I'm finding about the world of Microsoft Flight Simulator at the moment. Okay, there is our turn over to Temta and NERDU. We're at 11,000 feet. We'll have to start reducing our speed here in a little bit. Fact is, I usually have found that if you reduce it in increments of 10, that doesn't interrupt your descent too much, and it slows you down just fine. Now is probably the perfect time for me to also do all the things that people on YouTube do that are kind of annoying, but thank you so much for watching the Spy Flight here on YouTube. I'm relatively new still here on YouTube, so if you've got the time and you liked what you see, hitting the like button does make a big difference. Also, if you like what you see, come on and join us over on the Spy Flight on Twitch. We are flying every day, Tuesday through Sunday at 1900 Zulu. During the winter months, that's 2 p.m. Eastern time in the U.S. Everything is a group flight, although we're doing an awful lot more flying on VATSIM these days. We are not slowing down very much at 250 knots, so technically we're a little fast. I'm going to reduce my rate of descent to about 1,200 feet per minute. And let's see if that's starting. There, it's starting to slow down. I was a little bit late. See what happens when you do the annoying YouTube things? heading select button again. If you also really liked what you saw, this is also, I'm one of those people who had a job and a career and got layoff after layoff. So this is how it is that I'm kind of keeping the lights on right now. If you did like what you see, any support is so very much appreciated. You can, over here on YouTube, there is a link to Ko-fi. Over on Twitch, subscriptions over there are super duper appreciated. Also, each day that we fly, I do a pre-flight video over on Patreon. Usually every Sunday's Patreon video is free, so it's out from behind the paywall. So if you like what you see over there, joining me over on Patreon would really help an awful lot too. We're going to make our 6,000 feet very easily, so I'm going to continue to reduce the rate of my descent here to about 900 feet per minute, because we're not quite to 250 knots. And beyond that, the only other thing is I'm still relatively new here on YouTube, so I'm still to the point where I'm reading all the comments. If you saw something that I didn't do right, if you think, if you're a real-world pilot and says, oh, no, we never do it like this, we do it like that, I really appreciate comments like that. Or if there's an airplane that you'd like to see one of these cold and dark videos for, again, I'm still reading all the comments here on YouTube, so thanks for coming in and being such great support. All right, we're coming to the end of the star. Remember, the star is Nurdu. So even more important to hit that heading select button. And I'm going to bring my map in one more click. And we're going to make sure that we're heading up to the next waypoint. We're at 250 knots. All of this is good. What did we decide the transition was? 11,000 feet. Boy, I missed that one, didn't I? Yeah, see, doing those silly YouTube things, right? So it's going to be 1037. 1037 is the altimeter. Oh, that increased our altitude, so we still got some descending to do, don't we? But fortunately, the only thing we have to do at Nurdu is be above 6,000 feet. That's it. So now I'm going to switch over to the transition here, and you can see we're coming in at Nurdu, and we have to hold 6,000 feet as we're doing the transition. So we really don't have to worry too much. Oh, look at that. We're making a real crazy turn here. Let's see. Are we making a turn to Nurdu? No, we're still going to Nurdu. I'm guessing the wind changed. The winds changes can be a little bit abrupt in Microsoft Flight Simulator. And we're still turning. We got a 34 knot crosswind. I don't know. I don't feel good about this. Yeah, it's definitely making a turn. Heading hold. It's doing something weird. So heading hold. We're coming back around to Nurdu. And now we got to do this by ourselves. Yep, something was going on here. It will do that. And so again, if you've got your heading bug set, it's one button and you're able to correct it easily. In some cases, I've been able to correct the flight, the heading before ATC even noticed it. Sometimes, though, they do notice it and say, "What are you doing up there, crazy spy pilot?" Okay, so we're coming up here to Nurdu. Our next waypoint is Whiskey Whiskey 987. There it is. According to the descent, it's above 6,000 feet. We do a speed reduction at Whiskey Whiskey 977. So we're going to go ahead and continue the flight. We're slightly off to the side here. Another unfortunate part of this airplane at the moment is the fact that we cannot do direct twos in the flight plan once you get into SIDS, and stars, and transitions. That is a real hard part about it. The developer knows about this, and it's just a limitation of the Microsoft Flight Simulator FMC that they're having to use right now. So unfortunately, doing direct twos is really difficult. We could actually do a direct two ourselves. So if we look up here, we could see there's no airplanes, and ATC might say direct to Whiskey 983. What do you do? Well, just make the turn and point yourself in that direction. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to say that we got a direct to Whiskey 983. And look outside and enjoy the lights of Vienna. When they do give you one of those, so Whiskey 983 is right here, above 6,000 feet. We should see the airport, and we have to be above 6,000 feet. That's the only thing we have to worry about. Okay, and do we look like we're going in the general direction of Whiskey 983? Yeah, that's about as good as it's going to get on this airplane right now. Maybe just a few more degrees over there. You may get ATC. Uh-oh, I'm changing my altitude. I've found that I have a problem with that. Oops, we want to be at 6,000 feet. There we go, 6,000 feet and 250 knots. I do have the tendency to start turning the wrong dial over here, and that kind of gets me into trouble every now and then. So we're continuing to make our turn. We've got the wind blowing us from left to right, so that's why I didn't turn directly into it. And if you look around here, you can see, aha, there is our airport. Welcome to Vienna. And all of that looks really good. So far, so good. Now, you can see over here on FMS1, it's completely twisted around. Unfortunately, I can't update it and tell it that we've gone and done a direct to at the moment. So that's just one of those things that's going to be off. If all of your instruments are bad and you're flying this in a VATSIM event and you don't want to bail, the thing that you can do is just go ahead and navigate using your charts here. That's about the only thing that you can do. Let's check the ILS. 1166-108.0. So it doesn't look like it's going to flip that around for us. So I'm going to do it manually now. Oh, did you see we got another wind change? So 108.1. That's going to be the ILS for runway. 108.1. Now we also have to dial in our course. So because the FMC is already kind of messed up, let's just go ahead and hit the VL button. There's VOR2. I'm going to go to localizer 1, and the inbound course is 339. So what we need to do is look and see. This course is 265, so we need to reset the course heading to 339. Lots of little things to do when it doesn't work. So let's go ahead and spin this around. There's 304, 308, 339. Now we've already set everything up, so we're good to go for the ILS. 339, the altimeter is set. You can also see localizer 1 says OEN. This is the call sign, or the alphanumeric, the alpha identifier, Oscar Echo November. You're also going to want to come over here and verify that on your chart. OEN. We are tuned to the correct frequency that we want. So that's another thing to do. Looks like we're coming up close to Whiskey, but we probably need to adjust our heading a bit. So I'm going to go, how about 5 degrees to the right, and see if we can get a little bit closer to Whiskey 983. Again, LNAV at the moment is just going to be useless for you. As we continue to come around, our next big problem is going to be a speed reduction, and that speed reduction is 230 knots and above 6,000 at Whiskey 977. Awful lot of whiskey on this flight. Okay, let's continue the turnover. How about another 5 degrees so we can kind of get all set up here? Most of the controllers in VATSIM right now realize that this airplane is popular, but it's still rather limited. So you can be kind of off your course line like this for a little bit. Not much, but close. And outside, we can come over here. The airport has disappeared, is right under the wing. So we can slide over the co-pilot seat and look out there and see there is Vienna Airport. And there's our runway too. Wow, did it get dark fast. Still coming up here to Whiskey 983. We are 5 miles from the ILS here. And that's going to be right, yeah, it's about 5 miles, so there's our distance. And after Whiskey 983, we're going to slowly turn over our course heading and follow the line in. Sometimes LNAV will pick up on this and correct. Most of the time it doesn't. So let's go ahead, 150. Remember, you've got some wind kind of behind you and from the left. So we'll not be directly on the line. And so far, so good. Still 6,000 feet. Ah, look at this. Glide slope and localizer have activated on us. So that looks really good, too. Now, if there's no traffic, ATC will not make you do this whole transition. So they could come down and say, right now, say, you know, Lufthansa 441, descend and maintain 4,000. So descend and maintain 4,000 and reduce speed to 210 knots. That means they're getting ready to kick you up in the queue and get you ready to land here. So why do we do that? 210 knots, there's our speed going down. And let's go ahead, and I'm going to still use my vertical speed because I have time. And this time we'll go down at about 1,100 feet per minute. And we're right on the line here, so we're looking pretty good. Might need to continue our turn. How about another 10 degrees? And that should put us right on the line there. Again, we're not even bothering with LNAV. And you can see the glide slope starting to come up here. Let's see, flaps 1, our speed over here on the placard is 230 knots. So we could do flaps 1 at about 230. We're not getting any close to that 210, so we may need to go and do a little speed break here. Let's see if that helps out any. Yeah, maybe 2 clicks of speed break to get our speed down. And you can see we have a dot here. So that's the point where we can go and really start throwing out some flaps if we want to. Hey, look at that. The glide slope is coming up pretty good. We're right on the line. That's nice too. Maybe if we descend not quite as fast. How about 900 feet per minute? We'll get a little closer. To keep things busy, ATC just called and said speed now 180 degrees. 180 knots and turn, 90 degrees right. So our heading would be turn to a heading of 240 degrees. So 240 degrees on the heading. They're really kicking us up fast in the queue. They're ready. They want to get us on the ground. So there is about 90 degrees into the ILS. Let's go ahead and click the map into 5 miles. That looks good. Speed's coming down. We're below the dot. How about flaps 1? There goes flaps 1. Flaps 2 is 215 knots. We're going to go to flaps 2. And there, oh, it already put us to flaps 3. Must have hit the button too many times. There is 180. Let's see. Flaps 4 is 190. So we could go to flaps 4. Landing gear. Let's go get our gear out. Put our speed brakes away. We're doing really good here. Remind yourself again of your landing speed. VAP is 145. I always like to add 1 and call it 146. We're coming on up here. We're probably going to get a command from ATC now to turn right to a heading of 310 degrees. So right turn to 310 degrees, maintain 4,000 until established, cleared for the ILS, runway 34. That's usually what they'll say at this point. We're nicely configured. Let's go auto brakes low. I'm using low auto brakes because at the airport we're coming in on runway 34. We don't want to jam on the brakes immediately. We got a long taxi. And all of that looks really good. Let's go ahead and get a little help from the ILS and the autopilot. I'm going to hit the approach button. And as we come in and intercept the localizer, localizer is green and armed. Glide slope is white. That means it's all ready to go. Gear is down 3 green. Auto brakes are set. I believe you have to do your speed brakes manually on this. And they'll also probably tell you maintain 180 knots until 5 miles DME. So 5 miles DME, well, we're at 12 now. And so we can't slow it down to 146 knots until we're 5 miles out. We have totally neglected to turn on lights. Let's turn on the landing lights. Should have done that at 10,000 feet. We're also going to go sterile cockpit and do devices. So we're going to tell flight attendant seats for landing. We're going to say devices. Turn off, put away your laptops and stuff. I'm going to reset the heading bug again in case we have to go around. And we're looking really good. Now's also a great time to brief yourself on the approach and the landing. So we're exiting to the left. We're going to try and get Bravo 5 or 4. We're really good on the approach. There we are coming on in. And now once I've done all that, I'm going to go and take this map and zoom it all the way in again. And that's going to be my moving map on the ground. Looking pretty good there. There's 9 miles DME. Glide slope is green now. That means we've captured the glide slope. Down we go. We hope. We're still at 180 knots, 9 miles. So we got to keep the speed up for airplanes behind us. Lots of stars out tonight. And by the way, I don't know if you can see, there is Orion's belt, Orion's sword, and Orion's hat. You can see the constellations are all in the correct place in Microsoft Flight Simulator at night. Okay, our speed's starting to pick up a little bit into the red zone, so we're going down a little fast here. Might need some speed brake. Make sure you leave your hand on the speed brake lever until you get out of that red zone. I think I had flaps out a little too far. We're at flaps 3 now. That's probably good. There's 6 miles DME. It's descending pretty fast. Might need some more speed brake. One of the things real pilots will say is if you've got a speed brake lever in your sim cockpit, generally on approach, the rule is if you have to use speed brakes on the approach, you never take your hand off the speed brake lever until you put them down, because you will forget, and that will cause you a problem on landing. We are so close to 5 miles DME. Let's go to our VAP speed, which is 146. So 146 for landing, flaps 5. 146. There we go. And we can probably now do flaps 4. There's flaps 4. That looks good. We could probably do flaps 5. Flaps are set. Landing gear is down. Auto brakes are set. Now's the time to gently sit back. If you've got rudder pedals, don't put your feet on the rudder pedals abruptly. You don't want to move them around, but gently do that. If you've got physical throttles like mine, I'm going to take them just below the halfway point and a little bit lower, and let the airplane continue to do the work. If we were on VATSIM, we'd be kicked over to tower now, and I would at this point be looking to see if there's ground control. If there's ground control, I'm going to preset that in my comm radio because they're usually kicking you over to ground when you're doing 20 other things and you don't have time. So I try to preset my ground control frequency right now. And so far so good. And at this point, I think we're all set for landing. At this point, gently get ready to take control of the airplane. But still, if you've got things to do, no shame in letting the autopilot take you down at this point. If we had a co-pilot that could take care of all the other things, sure, you're going to take off the autopilot sooner. Looking good. I think now's good. Autopilot off. Autopilot is off. You might have to hit the button a second time to stop it from telling you that you've turned off the autopilot. Generally, I'm told that the PAPI lights bring you in a little bit high in Microsoft Flight Simulator. They need to do some work on those. Landing. Auto throttle's off. Over the runway.
20, 10.
Reversers. And speed brakes. Oh, I bounced. Man, that was a hard landing. Not much speed brake. I'm just doing an idle reverse thrust here. Reversers are off. Turn off the auto brakes. Speed brakes can go down. And here is a high speed. We'll get off now. If it was snowing, I would also get my flaps up pretty quick, because you don't want to kick up a bunch of junk in there. And off we go. Might, definitely keep your speed up a little bit. And my moving map shows that I need to make a right turn here. And so here's a right turn. Now at this point in time, we're off the high speed. So at this point in time, we would also be concerned with ground control. Sometimes ground control in VATSIM is so grateful that you've gotten out of the way. And sometimes they get a little annoyed with you if you are taxiing a little bit too far for them. There is the edge of that other runway. And then we're going to come on over here. And then this is going to get us all set up for the taxiway into the terminal. I have no idea where Lufthansa might be parking here at Vienna, so we'll just grab ourselves a gate as we come on in. Usually, I think, though, they park the smaller airplanes on the opposite side of the terminal. So we'll kind of do a little S-turn, come around here, and we're going to get on the other side of the terminal. Let's see. Generally, I think the... Oh, I never shut off the APU. Oh, what a bad pilot. Generally, in Europe, I don't think they turn on the APU as you're coming on in. As you're coming on into the airport, they want to plug you into ground power first. Okay, so there's the big de-icing pad and the fire department over there. And we'll keep coming on up here and make the next available left. And there's our terminal area. How about the Nope, I think maybe we do want this one. And there's more de-icing, so we kind of work our way over here. I probably didn't do that right, but so far so good. So let's see, flaps are up, speed brakes are down, auto brakes are off. Let's see, you could also turn off the no smoking / devices sign. Let passengers use their cell phones once you get on the ground. We've already turned off the strobes. The APU is set up and ready to go. So sterile is still on and seatbelts are still on. And here we are on the other side of the gate area where I think they'll bring the smaller airplanes. And fortunately, we've got these nice little lights here. And you can see we got a green line, a blue line, and an orange line. And that is really one of the cool things that they're starting to model now, just like the real airports. So we'll kind of come on in here. And we're moving along pretty good. Our ground speed at the moment is 10 knots. This is what you want to be when you're taxiing on in. And if you look over at the side windows and you've been a passenger before, chances are, you know, that's going to look pretty good to you. We've got some pretty big gates down here, but the last three look like they're normal-sized, smaller airplane gates. So we'll grab, how about Foxtrot 8? So we look over here. There's G16, F16. And yeah, it goes, and then it goes to 12. And we're looking for 8. Start to slow it down a little bit more. I think that's 8 right over there. Oh, we stopped. And start turning on in and hope that that is 8. And the one at the end I don't think has a jetway. And it says Foxtrot 8. Really cool. Okay, thrust to idle. Nose light off. Because even the taxiway lights will blind your ground crew as you're coming on in. And we should be able to come on and get to the gate just fine. Once you get to the gate, you can unload the airplane. I don't really have much gate guidance set up here. So the best thing to do is come on out and look over off to the side so you can see the nose wheel. And generally, I'll try and put my doorway relatively close to the jetway. How about number 2 spot right there? There we go. Parking brakes can go on. Parking brakes are on. Everything looks good over here. Come on over to the ground. We're going to have ground crew come in and chalk the airplane. And at this point, since I left the APU on for the whole freaking flight, we'll go ahead and hit stop on the engines. We'll go to standby on the transponder. Sterile and fasten seatbelts will go off almost immediately. We can also turn off the beacon, and we'll turn off that little pump. Come on back over here. We'll go ahead and open up cargo, lay out some cones, get a ground power unit, and we'll also request the jetway. Here comes our jetway. Looks like it's going to come right on out to the door just fine. It does tend to jump around a little bit, but we chose a good parking place. 457 feet per minute. It was kind of a hard landing here. How did we do? So flight simmers, as you know, we love to stress over the landing rate, that number up there. But really what we care about the most is how close were we to the big bars, the landing touchdown point. As you can see from the red dot, I was pretty much in the middle of the runway, but I wasn't quite there. So I could have held my nose up just a little bit and maybe got a little more butter out of it. But really, the most important thing, put the wheels down right between those two big white bars. If you can do that, that's the best part of it. Okay, we'll also go ahead and open up cargo. We do have a ground power unit, so we could punch that in and make it available, but we're also going to have to go ahead and shut down the APU at this point. Come down here to departure and hit the real-time button, and that's going to unload your airplane. And so your airplane is going to be unloaded, so you could go and do a second flight. If you look down at the flight management computer, you'll have to zero out a few things. So if you go to the route, if you hit delete EDDM, that resets your route. And that should clear out most of it, but a lot of your data is going to be needed. Okay, it's upset about something. What? Door are open. Oh, So I did not have my engines exactly at idle. We did not shut down the engines. That's why it was beeping at me. My engines were still on, so that's why it was upset. Sorry. And we arrived 31 minutes late. So we left a little late, and we arrived a little late, but oh my gosh, that's okay. What a cool airplane. These airplanes are currently flying. The 190s and 195s are flying mostly in Europe. The 170s and 170 and 175s are flying mostly in the United States. So these are airplanes that you can fly on real routes. In fact, I think Lufthansa Regional actually flies the 190, 195 on this particular route, which makes it kind of fun. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope that this helps you get your Embraer up off the ground, up to cruise, and down to the runway without any trouble. Again, I always like to say this is what works for me, and I really hope that this works for you too. I'm, again, new on YouTube. I read all the questions in the comments, and I'll be back in about a week with another Cold and Dark with another one of the great airplanes here in Microsoft Flight Simulator. In the meantime, I hope you'll join us over on Twitch TV 757 Spy. In the meantime, thank you so very much for watching. I hope your sim flying is going great. Can't wait to see you on the next flight. In the meantime, as I always like to say, stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you in the friendly sim skies. Cheers.